Greetings, Tezos Nation. Welcome to another edition of TezTalks Live. I'm Stu from the Tezos Commons. Joining me today is Jeremy Foo, Global Head of Gaming at TZAPAC. TZAPAC, for those who might not know, is the Tezos organization focused on Tezos growth and adoption in the Asia-Pacific region. Jeremy is joining us today for an update on current developments in the Asia-Pacific region and gaming both here in the Tezos ecosystem and in the blockchain world more broadly. Hi, Jeremy. Where are you right now, and how is the weather?
Hey Stu, it's great to be here. I'm in London right now, and the weather is unfortunately terrible as usual.
As it so often is in London. To get the ball rolling, can you tell us a little bit about your personal background and your journey into the exciting world of blockchain technology?
Sounds good. So I started my career in consulting, did my MBA, and then took a big risk and joined a startup. There was a gaming company that grew from a small private company into a $200 billion public traded company called C Limited. During that time, I worked on games like League of Legends as the leader producer in Thailand, also on Garena Free Fire, which is a massive success, and also led strategic investments. During that time, we saw the rise of Axie Infinity, which piqued my interest in blockchain and gaming. And so I decided to make the jump 2 years ago to join the Tezos ecosystem in order to grow gaming here on Tezos by finding innovative games that use the blockchain in a meaningful way.
Okay. And as you mentioned, that your journey has led you to becoming global head of gaming at TZAPAC. I introed TZAPAC a little bit off the top there, but for those who might not be familiar, how would you describe TZAPAC and its place in the Tezos ecosystem?
Sure. It's one of the many kind of entities that focus on growing Tezos as a whole. The focus is, of course, on Asia, but we try to support global initiatives as well. I think ultimately, the entire ecosystem is here for the growth of the Tezos blockchain. So my role is essentially quite global in nature and trying to find the best partners in the world and bring them onto Tezos.
Okay. And as your role is very specifically focused on gaming, you're the global head of gaming at TZAPAC. What do you do exactly? What does your day-to-day look like in that role?
Yep, sounds good. So I think ultimately there are three things we need to do well, and we are trying to do well. The first thing is finding the right partners. So trying to find games that actually fun, that are able to use blockchain in a sustainable manner, and then of course evaluating teams like the product, the market, the team, etc., making sure they can launch successfully. The next step is kind of supporting them. So I think one thing that sets us apart is kind of we focus on a very small number of high quality partners, 20 to 25 a year. And then we just kind of provide them strategy, marketing, technical, and some funding support as well. The final part is around building up the ecosystem. And of course, I work closely with my colleagues all across the Tezos ecosystem for this. But we need to build up things like launch pads, working bridges, indexes, etc. Because ultimately that's how we get real players to come into our games.
Okay. And from your title, it sounds like you're not just focusing on Tezos powered gaming projects only in the Pacific Asia region, but in other regions as well. In which parts of the world are game developers working on Tezos powered gaming projects currently?
So we definitely see a lot of developers in both Europe and Asia. For example, we have partners in London, France, and even Bulgaria. Tap Nation, Battle Rise, and Sugar Gaming, for example. And in Asia as well, with studios in Singapore, India, and Vietnam, Metapels, Cricket Stars, and Auto Hero as examples there. So it's definitely quite broad in terms of where we aim, because we see a lot of users coming from Southeast Asia as well. So I think Asia and Europe are definitely our where we have competitive advantages and where we're focusing on.
Does that involve a lot of travel for you, or do they typically come to where you are?
It's a fair amount of travel, mostly to the gaming conventions like GDC and Gamescom, and of course the crypto ones like Token 2049 and EFCC.
Okay. And once you sort of make contact with these projects, what kinds of supports do you and your team offer to those looking at building a blockchain gaming project here in the Tezos ecosystem?
Got it. So yeah, I think I'll split it into maybe five things. There's funding, there's strategy, marketing, partnerships, and technical support. On the funding side, it's expensive to build games. GTA 6 is probably going to cost $300 to $400 million. We're not as ambitious. We're trying to find small games here, but it's still an expensive endeavor. So we need to in many cases, we try to support us in the beginning a small amount of money until they find some level of prototype and some level of success. And then we also support them in finding funds from external sources like VCs and other investors through like launch pads and exchange listings, etc. as well. Strategy wise, again, a lot of our partners actually come from strong Web2 backgrounds. They see the potential for Web3, but are a bit clueless in terms of where the value can be unlocked. So we are the closed thought partners and kind of help them with where it makes sense, where does trading make sense, and where it doesn't, tokenomics and things like that. Marketing, I think we've really started to ramp up marketing in the past few months. I think ultimately we've kind of seen that good chains are there to also support the games, and they do marketing almost on behalf of the chain of the games as well. So that's something we're starting with, and we've started having some success with some mega spaces where we invite a lot of our gaming partners and a few cool influencers like Yellow Penta and of course the Tezos team as well to talk about the games and exciting stuff that's happening. Final thing is technical. So building on the blockchain is difficult, especially if you don't have a blockchain engineer in your team. Many of our partners are smaller studios which don't. So we have kind of two engineers dedicated to actually helping games that are building in our ecosystem to integrate Tezos and Etherlink in a smart way. So that's essentially all the support that we provide.
Okay. And you mentioned that a lot of this comes from you attending gaming conferences and gaming events, and I assume looking at projects and seeing if there's a fit between the ones you like and Tezos. But if somebody was watching this right now and they were like, I want to work with TZAPAC, I want to build my game in the Tezos ecosystem, how would those interested in working with you and your team get in touch with you?
Cool. You can always reach out to me on Telegram. I'm at Cozyverse, and on Twitter as well. So I'm at Foo for Fun, FOOFORFUN.
Good handle.
Yeah. So that's how you can reach me.
And as far as the projects that you're currently working with, I understand there's some token launches coming up from projects that your team has already worked with. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Absolutely. So there would be two of them which I would highlight. One is called Sugar Gaming. The other is called Battle Rise. So Sugar Gaming first, they are a Bulgarian game studio. They've been around for 15 years building Web2 games. Two successful hits with 60 million downloads between those two games and very sustainable revenues. So they know how to build good games. So they've seen the potential of Web3. They're building a kind of a PvP match 3 game. Which sounds strange, but there are some success cases in the Web2 space, but none in Web3. So we're excited for that. And the tokens that there will be used to upgrade the NFTs within that PvP match to give you some special abilities as you're fighting your opponents. They also have 4 other games coming up. So there'll be a suite of kind of hybrid casual games that will all utilize these NFTs and tokens to play. So that's one we're really excited about. The other one is Battle Rise, which is an RPG game that's coming out. The game is actually already live. It's just the blockchain side, the trading side is still being implemented.
Okay.
So they have lots of fans. It's a great game. That people love it. And so they're doing the Founders Pass in the 2nd of October, and then the token launch later on this year. I think one takeaway is that it is hard to launch tokens. There's a lot. It's almost like a separate product. You need to work with the exchanges, the launch pads. You need to think very carefully around the tokenomics and how that affects the player experience. So it's non-trivial, I would say, and so it's something that we try our best to help our partners with and learn together with them as well.
Okay, and I've also heard there's news coming about a new game on Tezos called Pikes Arena. How much can you tell us about that game?
Cool. So Pikes Arena is a game built by Allset Studio. So they are a studio that's again very experienced in Web 2. They built some great games like Game of Nations and some of these games that have been quite successful. So they wanted to kind of take something that was extremely successful in Web 2 but didn't monetize well. And this was a game called Pikes.io. So Pikes.io has about 50 to 60 million players. And this is not done by Allset, right? This is just a actual game. But we took that game as an inspiration. We added a little bit of innovation, and we added this system where you can essentially wager a bit of Tez against your friends as you're enjoying the game. It's fun to win $1. It's more fun winning $1 from your best friend. So I think that's the idea behind it. The game it feels fun. It just feels really good. You can take money from your friends, which is
aside from being able to take money from my friends, how is Pikes Arena different from other games and gaming models we've seen released in the Tezos ecosystem so far?
Hmm. So I think if I zoom up a bit, the goal I think is really to try to find blue ocean genres where the blockchain is being used in a meaningful way. I think it is really difficult to convince, I would say, very established gamers who already have a kind of a preconceived idea of what gaming is to embrace blockchain unless it's extremely abstracted. And there is a very strong negative connotation with blockchain in the traditional gaming market with the traditional gamers today. So I think the way we're thinking about it is we're trying to target users that are a bit more, I'd say, open-minded, or at least less concerned about the blockchain side of things. And so that's really kind of what we're trying to accomplish. And to give some examples, I think Sugarverse with the Match-3 PvP game, I think it uses the blockchain in a meaningful way that enables you to use the tokens to actually upgrade your characters, but also decide whether or not you want to sell them, you want to use them to upgrade. The NFTs, you can assemble a nice, the right combination of them because you can have multiple of them in the game with different abilities. So there's a lot of strategy and tactics involved. Like, should you trade this one with your friend or with a stranger to assemble the best team for yourself?
So, as going back to Pikes Arena, I know you mentioned Allset Studios a couple of minutes ago, but they're, as you say, they're quite a successful gaming studio. How did the collaboration between the team at Allset Studios and the team at TZAPAC get started, and what does it look like?
Hmm. So we typically have two models. One is we call it second-party games, and the other one is third-party games. So Allset is a second-party game where we kind of work closely with them, and we very very hand in hand with them on the design of the game and the development and execution, and even the marketing of the game as well. It was a very kind of close, bespoke relationship. I'd say we only try to do maybe 2 or 3 of these a year. The majority of the game partners we have are third parties who essentially have their own kind of P&Ls and their own goals of becoming, extremely successful big games. We're there to support them across the 5 things I mentioned earlier. But ultimately, the success and the results of those success drives towards the third-party studios themselves.
Okay. And obviously, we're all interested in seeing what the result is of a collaboration like that. When will we be able to play Pikes Arena, and where will we be able to find it?
Got it. So Pikes Arena should go live in October. So just 1 month's time. We've also working closely on a marketing campaign, with some budget behind influencers and paid user acquisition as well, in order to attract a critical mass of users into the game. And I think the quality is good enough that many of these users will stay and also pay. I think October is the date to watch out for. Just keep posted on the Tezos Twitter. We will make more announcements once we have an exact date.
Okay, perfect. This is all great stuff so far, and I'm excited to learn more. But before we dive into the nitty gritty, are you ready for the world famous TezTalks lightning round?
No idea what it is, but yes, let's do it.
All right, then it is lightning round time. Remember, there are no wrong answers. This is just for fun, so our viewers can get to know you a little bit better. Are you ready?
All right, let's do it.
Are you a night owl or an early riser?
Definitely a night owl. I think any gamer that tells you he's not is lying.
Exercise or naps?
Ooh, gaming. That's a good answer.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Chicken or fish?
Chicken.
Good choice. What is your favorite country to visit for a vacation?
Oh, this is tough. I love Japan, but I recently went to Tanzania for safari, and that was
Ooh,
a lifetime trip for me.
very cool. If you were elected king of the world, what's the first thing you would do?
uh, Make gaming mandatory.
Name one thing you will never do again.
Stay up for an entire night gaming. It just wrecks your body, especially when you get older.
Yeah. I feel like I already know your answer to this, but what is the secret to happiness?
Oh yeah, you guessed correctly. I think, but no, actually, I think it's a happy wife. I think that's the number one thing.
Even
I
better.
think gaming is the close second.
Okay. Do you have any pets?
We are actually planning to get a kavapu in a couple weeks time, so we're really excited for that.
Very cool. And finally, what is your again, I know what you're gonna say here. What's your favorite thing to do on a rainy day?
Yep, you guessed it. I don't need to say it.
Excellent answers. This concludes the Tez Talks lightning round. Let's get back into it. Um, Now that we've talked about TZAPAC and what you're working on and your role as global head of gaming, I'd like to zoom out a little bit and talk about the state of blockchain powered gaming in 2024 more broadly. Obviously, we've been hearing about gaming as an important use case for blockchain technology for some time now, but we have yet to see a blockchain powered game really catch on just yet. Can you talk a bit about the roadblocks that builders in the Web3 gaming space still need to overcome for this concept to reach its promise?
Got it. So I think a big part of this is like how is it actually adding value to the players, right? And if you think about the case examples of successes, Axie obviously being one. And my theory has always been that, yes, I think the money aspect, play to earn, was a big part of it. But the really interesting part was around the breeding side of things. So having the Axie owners actually try to min max how to breed the Axies well, get the right
Mm,
traits. The game itself, I'd say, it's not the best RPG, let's put it that way. But the breeding system, the way that you actually got new characters and got to use them and maybe even rent them out to other users, that was really cool in my view. And then fast forward, I think the next one, which people typically forget about, that's still doing quite well today, is So Rare. So Rare is a fantasy football game where you can buy cards of the top players and then assemble them in a fantasy league and play for some rewards every week. So again, I think that's a perfect use case where you're essentially having supporting the players that you love, but also using them in an intelligent way to try to win. So I think that those are exciting things. Then we move on to a little bit more degen side things, where that recently we have seen Fantasy Top, which is essentially a fantasy league for crypto influencers, as well as the ever present Pump Fund, which was helped you like kind of launch meme coins. And again, I think these are very crypto native Web3 kind of experiences. But it's in the name, right? It's Pump Fun. It's fun. It's a game, and so is Fantasy Top, where again fantasy league for crypto influencers. So I think ultimately all of these four examples have, in some shape or form, provided real value to their players, whether or not it's gambling, casino, trading, or the breeding side of things. And I think all of these, as long as there's real value to users, then we start to see some level of success, right? And so I think ultimately, yeah, just kind of focusing clearly on what value there is to players for being on the blockchain is important. And then the second one is, of course, just reducing the amount of friction, because as you know, just signing in, creating a wallet, etc. We have a study done in Web2 that says the loading time of more than 10 seconds means that it's terrible. Many players will quit if the loading time is more than 10 seconds.
mm,
So with the Web3 kind of friction, really truly abstracting it, at least in the beginning, is something that's really important for mass adoption.
absolutely. And you mentioned You mentioned adding value, and you mentioned Axie as an example of that. And I mean, it was really interesting to see the sort of the community that emerged around it. Once you were providing value to people who were playing this game, it sort of took on a life of its own. And you had, as you say, you had people running breeding farms, you had people forming guilds, you had people renting out the NFTs to each other. It was really interesting to see that economy sort of grow on its own.
Mm.
Um, which is something that I find really exciting about this concept in general. But for yourself, what do you personally find exciting about the concept of blockchain powered gaming and blockchain as part of the gaming experience?
Got it, got it. I think you spoke about it correctly in that, Axie being a good example of having that, that breeding system and kind of distributing that mechanics to the broader audience. I think that's really exciting. And I think, the kind of the addition to that as well would be the trading aspect, right? So
Mhm.
and owning your assets, but owning your assets in and of itself doesn't mean much for gamers. But actually being able to use them and trade them, I think that's something that's really fun. When I was young, I used to play World of Warcraft, as everyone else did. And a big part of my fun was actually, playing the auction house, trying to data mine what was going to launch next, and then buying up the resources that would increase in value. So, that was, I think that there's a fun aspect there for a certain subset of players. And even for regular players who just want to trade and assemble a strong team with their friends, I think that's super exciting as well. The next one is interoperability. So, I think this is very overly used. It's the way it works is you're not going to be able to use the sword in like 3 different games, but you will use the sword in one game, and you'll be able to read that. Hey, you have the sword in one game. Maybe it will give you some benefits or some additional use cases in the other games as well. So I think that's an exciting one too. And the last one I think is very very simply around player acquisition and community building. So in Web 2 today, it's actually a bloodbath in terms of acquiring new users for, especially in the mobile games industry. It used to be a couple of dollars, you could get a good quality user in the US. Now it's closer to $10. So it's incredibly difficult to really have a paid user acquisition campaign that has positive kind of returns on that campaign for Web 2 mobile games today. So one of the things that tokenization and NFTs does is that it brings in users and it actually rewards them for being kind of enthusiastic and contributing, and also inviting their friends into that space as well. So obviously there's a bit of a balance. You want to avoid attracting pure kind of extractive users, airdrop
Mm.
farmers, or play to earn users. At the same time, there is some value in kind of rewarding your early community and your early believers. So that's kind of the way I think about it.
Okay. And I know you touched briefly on this a few minutes ago. Um, do you think there's resistance from the gaming community to allowing blockchain technology into their world, into their little this important space to them? As a gamer, I'm sure you understand what I'm describing.
There's definitely so, both from the developer as well as the player angle. So I came from the Web 2 space, and I do have a few friends who no longer speak with me because of my domain.
Really?
It's not that bad. It's just like it's just they're not actively reaching out. They don't hate me. It's just what it is. But it is true that I think there's for whether it's real or not, that there's this idea that crypto, there's a lot of scams, there's a lot of like over financialization of things, and partly because it's true, and partly because there's this negative perception around it. So I think for us, our mission, and especially here at Tezos, I think we do have a strong branding in terms of being quite serious people, in terms of really finding real use cases for the blockchain. So I think that's really actually one of the things which we do that kind of sets us apart. But yeah, to answer your question, I think there is certainly a stigma, both from the developer as well as especially the hardcore players around blockchain in games. And so, ultimately, I think it's really difficult to convince a hardcore Counter-Strike player to embrace the blockchain. It's much easier to convince someone who maybe isn't so against it to begin with. Again, Sugarverse and maybe Battle Rise is good examples for in order to get this through.
Okay. Well, I mean, the next thing I was going to ask was how we in the blockchain space can sort of help overcome that. But it sounds like what you're basically saying is overcoming that stigma and overcoming that resistance is probably mostly about producing games that people want to engage with so that they're sort of brought into this space. And then I suppose, you're saying a lot of the resistance comes from a perception of this world, that it's scammy and over financialized, and that is going to impact their day to day in that gaming space. So I suppose the other thing that we can do to overcome that is make sure that we don't do that with these projects. Make sure that we don't scam anybody. Make sure that we don't over financialize and make blockchain a problem.
Hmm.
Um, do you think it's that simple of just producing games that people want to play, having them experience it, and realize that that's not what's going to happen?
Yeah, yeah, I think it is. I think there are two key points, right? So one is that actual games that exist, and if you notice, most of the partners we work with, we don't just run around signing partners. We work with partners that already have games or have great track records in building games, because ultimately, we're not here to fund vaporware. We're here to fund kind of real games. So I think that's a big part of our strategy. And when that's why when our games launch their tokens, typically they already have a game that's playable and ready. And even when they launch NFTs, it's all playable and ready. We don't try to do it before it's ready. The second part is, and let me tell you the story about mobile gaming. Right, so mobile gaming came up in probably early 2000s, 2005, 2010, maybe 2010, and it was initially extremely negatively perceived by, again, the hardcore gamers, the real gamers of that time. Right, you played Counter-Strike, you played League of Legends, and these type of games, and you saw what is this nonsense, right? What is this mobile game thing? And then the first games that succeeded were not the kind of the FPSs and the MOBAs. They were Candy Crush, they were Clash of Clans, Angry Birds, right? So these were really things that unlocked the mass adoption of mobile, kind of showed that it was a viable business model. And then what happened 5 years after that was we figured out how to get first-person shooters and MOBAs onto mobile. And so now the top successful games, I worked on Free Fire, which was a huge battle royale. Fortnite and PUBG are the other two. League of Legends is now on mobile as well. So I think it's really a kind of a step-by-step process, but ultimately driven by high quality games that people actually enjoy.
Mhm.
That's our belief here as well.
100% agree with that belief. Um, as far as that goes, what potential do you see for Tezos and its ecosystem in this sort of emerging space of Web3 gaming? Is there an opportunity for Tezos to lead the way here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the how to say, the competitive landscape is so wide open, right? Like after XC, arguably, maybe if I said So Rare, Pump Fun, Fantasy Top, there's not been a huge kind of breakout success yet. And I think we'll always have an opportunity to kind of build strong games on Tezos, unless a sustainable Axie Infinity comes up on another chain, and they just get too far ahead, and then maybe we're screwed. But if not, I think the field is wide open. There's no incumbent, there's no big success today.
Hmm.
So I think for us, there's absolutely a big opportunity. And as I said, our strategy is really to focus on quality projects. We don't launch tokens before the game is there. We don't launch NFTs before the game is there. So I think hopefully we build out the reputation as somewhere, a chain which good quality stuff happens on. So people who come into our ecosystem, they're here to really enjoy the game, maybe make a little bit of money from it as well.
Okay. And what do you think makes Tezos an attractive ecosystem for those looking to realize their sort of their personal blockchain powered gaming vision?
Mm. So, I think a big part of it is our support system. So I said we focus on 20 to 25 close partners a year with kind of full support. I don't think many other chains do that. They do much more kind of spray and pray, and also don't provide the level of support. We've heard some complaints, and that's actually informed our strategy of, again, focus and full support, right? So I think that's one. I think the second one is, again, that reputation and branding for quality, like real projects. I think that those are the things that will set us apart. I think technologically, we've always been incredibly strong. So that's not something it's definitely something I talk about, but it's not something I'm worried about. So yeah, I think it's a given.
Okay. So as it's not something you can necessarily go in depth on, but obviously you have already been here a couple of years. You've already been working on with gaming projects that are building here. Um, as far as the tech goes and its ability to deliver what these people are looking for, what has stood out to you the most about Tezos's technology and what it has to offer?
Got it, got it. So I think ultimately there's a little bit of, I'd say, almost commoditization of the technology, where the developers are essentially happy to work with whatever helps them be scalable and stable, right? So they need to have, and of course, fast finality is important as well, because you don't want your players to wait an hour before the transaction goes through. So I think speed to finality, stability, and scalability, being able to support many players is important. And Tezos does that incredibly well. Etherlink will do that incredibly well too. But very honestly, I think there are other chains that do this too, right? So I think ultimately, it works well, which is half the battle, and then the other half is the kind of the support that we provide.
Okay. And I assume, based on what you've said so far about your friends in the gaming space and you kind of making the jump over here to blockchain, I assume that you've had this conversation before. But right now in 2024, if you're having a conversation with somebody who believes that blockchain gaming will never succeed, would you say to somebody who perceive things that way?
Hmm. So I think here at Tezos, we're very kind of pragmatic and realistic people. So I would say you might be right. I think you're wrong, but you might be right. Because I think there's still, today, there's not been huge successes, but there's a lot of things that hasn't been tried yet, right?
Mm,
Especially kind of really leveraging that player-driven economies, interoperability and user acquisition and community building side of things. So I think we're excited to try some of these with, again, the Battle Rise, with the role-playing game, really focusing, I'd say, on the really user acquisition and community building aspect, and Sugar Gaming focusing on the interoperability aspect. So, we are making some experiments and trials in this space. So, I think we have as good a chance as any to show that, this adds real value to players. And if we succeed there, then I can prove them wrong.
okay. And you use the analogy of the emergence of mobile gaming and the sort of the slow process involved with that in the beginning. And if you're comparing where we're at with blockchain gaming to that the growth of mobile gaming, we're probably not even at that Candy Crush stage yet. We're probably still Snake on our Nokias, right?
Exactly. That's a great analogy.
um, but as far as from your perspective, as somebody who has spent a lot of time working on this and thinking about this, what part do you think blockchain technology will play in the lives of gamers when deep into the future, when we get to the point where the games are ubiquitous and everybody is playing them?
Mm-hmm. So I think the dream in the future is, like, I would say, true interoperability, where you can really bring items in and across different experiences. Maybe the sword transforms into a gun or something. But again, let me stress that this is a 10-year vision, not a maybe 8 to 10 year vision, not a 2 to 3 year vision.
Yeah.
So I think that's one area which is truly exciting. And then the second one is, I think, again, it's really around kind of letting players do what they want in the economy of the world. So, being able to buy things with real money, and then if you're really good at predicting what other players want, being able to sell them later on as well. I think that's really kind of the two big use cases that I see.
Okay. And what's next for the TZAPAC team? Do you have any other exciting announcements or rollouts in the works?
Yeah, so I think it's really around kind of fully supporting the partners that we're closely working with today. So Battle Riot, Sugar Gaming coming out. There's other games like Auto Hero and Fantastic Team as well. So quickly, Auto Hero is a auto shooting game. You can get NFTs that are minted on Tezos, as well as upgrade them with Tez to improve the gameplay. And you can trade those equipments with your friends as well. The other one is Fantastic Team, where you are assembling a team of football players. You try to optimize them. There's a breeding system as well, which we inspired by Axie Infinity to really optimize what type of players you can get from there. And I'll be amiss not to mention Fantasy United as well. So this is definitely driven by my colleagues in the sports team, but it's a really kind of really great use case of fan engagement. You targeting kind of users and fans of a specific football club, and then you collect player cards from these players, and then assemble a team to participate in a fantasy league, depending on how well your favorite team does in that sport in the match that week. So yeah, I think those are the exciting things that are coming up.
Very cool.
The Pikes Arena, Sugarverse, and Battle Rise.
Awesome. And as far as all of these projects that are is there a centralized place where people can watch for announcements like this? And where's the best place to sort of keep up to date on those projects that you're partnering with?
So I think Tezos.com has a gaming section, which we regularly update and make sure that all our partners are featured there.
Okay.
That's one way. I think following us on Twitter, Tezos and myself, Foo for Fun, I think is another great way, because we'll definitely kind of do huge marketing pushes once our games are ready to launch.
Okay. We could go on all day, but unfortunately, we're almost at the end here. To all of our viewers, thanks for watching. If you'd like to get in touch with us, our social media contacts can be found at tezoscommons.org/TezTalks, and we'd love to hear from you. Jeremy, that was really interesting. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's always awesome to speak to the folks working behind the scenes to help Tezos claim its place at the blockchain-powered gaming table. Is there anything else you'd like to plug or mention or get to before we sign off here?
No, I think we've covered everything quite well in this call, and wanted to thank you, Stu, for really kind of organizing this, and it was a great pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we'd love to do it again as things continue to move forward and as these games that you're partnering with start to get released.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Awesome. To everyone out there in Tezos land, thanks for joining us on TezTalks Live. I'm Stu from the Tezos Commons, and our awesome guest has been Jeremy Foo, Global Head of Gaming at TZAPAC. Now let's go support the gaming projects being built in the Tezos ecosystem.